Was the baby in the background, is that part of the recording now?
I wish it was,
Oh.
but that was a live feature.
That was pretty good, actually. Did you hear that thunder?
I
Oh,
do
was
hear
that
it.
the rocket blowing up?
No, did you hear? No, no, no. Did you just hear the thunder above my house?
I did.
Thank you.
Josh, Josh is that was Josh. Josh, your audio is a little bit low, but I don't know if you can fix it or not.
He
Is this better?
can by speaking up a little bit
Oh,
Oh,
and maybe talking into the microphone.
does this work? Is this better? Can you hear me at
Uh,
all?
I mean, yes, I can definitely hear you. I
just a
would
little
say
bit. That's all.
you were louder before the recording.
That's interesting.
Wait, that's better.
All right.
All right, Ron. So what's going on?
Um, well, I had asked Dana to just kind of surprise us, I think. I mean,
All
that's
right. Well,
that's
surprise.
Well, I got a surprise. Remember, we have a email. So if anyone wants to ask a question or start a conversation with us, it is djron. djronshow@gmail.com. That's the djronshow@gmail.com. That's all. All right, Dana, surprise us.
Well, is it
Ooh.
the DJ Ron or DJ Ron
It is
show?
DJ Ron Show.
So there's no the in there. Okay, that no, thank you, Dana. That's important.
And I think we're going to send them something. Whoever
No.
emails us first.
No, no, no. That was a surprise. That was a surprise. Well, that's for the person who listens all the way through the last show. Maybe we could send another prize to the first person that emails us about anything.
Well, no,
Yes.
that was the thing. Jeff rightly put it at the very, very end because
Oh,
he,
Ron.
he said, if you make it this far, which if you make it that far, yeah, you probably should get you probably should get a prize. Honestly. Um, right? I mean,
Yeah, but now you revealed it. All the smart people out there know what to do now to find the secret message. So
I know, but you gotta think to yourself though. I mean, you're saying smart people out there. First, we got to get the email.
okay. So Dana, what's up?
Okay. Well, you can talk about whatever you want, but I had thought the question that would be interesting to talk about would be what would the recently converted you of however many years ago think about the you of today? And I thought that tied in nicely with the testimonies discussion last time. And Josh, our guest, um, he was sort of interested in talking about that too, right?
Sure.
So, so, so yeah, just what would the you of the past for us? I think it's 18 years ago or 20 years ago. I think the first question was, would the you of 20 years ago think that the you of today was a Christian?
Hmm. How was that?
Need you to go a little louder.
Who would like to go first?
Louder.
Ooh, you got louder when you did
Louder.
something. There you are. Um, who would like to go first? Well, we don't know anything about Josh, so doesn't it make sense that Josh would give a little bit about his own little testimony, if that makes any sense, and where he is today, or summary of his journey, or something along these lines?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That does make
I-
sense.
yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah, well, I'll go ahead and just get started on that unless there's anybody who wants to stop me.
I'll stop you.
Are
Two
you
things. Number one, your audio sounds good when you do that. And
All
number
right.
two, what's funny about this was Josh and Ron and me, did we all kind of meet around Brett's Bible study? Or did we all
Yes.
kind of, is that where we kind of got to know each other initially? I know we were kind of
Yes.
around the same people, but I feel like we were all at Brett's Bible study at some point.
Well, we were, but I don't know that that's where we all met initially. We kind of all tied into that and
Yeah.
other things because there was a group of people that we rotated between Golden Springs, CCV, and then a couple Bible studies around town, Josh, right?
But I think what I'm saying is I kind of met Josh here and there in certain ways, and Ron's here and there in certain ways,
CCV and
but
Brett's Bible study
but then Brett's Bible
seemed
study,
to be
all
kind
three
of
of
the
us were
center of all
actually,
three of us.
yeah, that's what
So I
I'm
don't
saying.
think you were really tied into the Calvary Chapel piece.
That's correct.
Yeah. Where I think Ron and I kind of circled more around Brett and Calvary Chapel.
And this is going back 20 years. And so although we all live in different places now and have our own little lives and perspectives, I would say, that's where this begins, at least us knowing each other about 20 years ago. So there you go. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, and Josh was not on the call last week, but Josh was one of the characters in the scene of the play during that period of time that we were talking about last week. And Josh, you're about to give that story.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that
I
was.
guess so. Maybe somewhere in there.
Can you,
Yeah, he does get
is there
confused what
any
he
way
says.
possible you can bring that closer to your mouth?
How's that?
That's
Oh, yes.
awesome, actually.
All right.
That's perfect.
All right. Well, you want me to go ahead and get started now?
Oh, yeah.
Please.
All right. Well, let's see. I don't know. I've been always kind of the inquisitive one. I remember very early on wondering, what is this all about? What's going on? Then at some point, I think one of the big turning points for me, well, actually, there was seeing Dave Heileman. Is he a character in the story yet?
No, he's not.
Oh, we're not supposed to say his last name, maybe.
No, we're not supposed to do that. Yeah,
Okay,
so
It's okay. No one's
codename
listening.
Harleman.
It's okay.
hey, yeah, don't and hey, if you did hear that, if somebody did happen to hear that full name, please
was-
by all means, like send an email
Oh,
right in.
I mentioned somebody by name on my podcast a couple weeks ago, and they wanted me to delete the whole thing. So it's like,
Oh,
okay.
there you go.
All right.
So don't you
well,
feel better, Jeff? It's not just your paranoia and my paranoia. It's kind of it's a community thing.
Perhaps.
it's a disease going around. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, anyway, so
Harley, man.
Harleman, I saw him at the great.
That's I don't know about that one. People might actually know better by Harley.
I'm never going to get through this, am I? Anyway, I saw him at the great Harvest Crusade, skipping along, I think, with you, Ron. I think that was when it was at actually Universal Studios, if I remember correctly. And this guy had just been recently converted, and I was blown away. I was just there on another Bible study with a Baptist church. Wasn't really too interested in the things going on. Just was there to kind of hang out, right? Fast forward a little bit, I had a major surgery that kind of shook me to my core a little bit. This guy who lived across the street from me, he approached me and basically after a few approaches, landed a very important question that still echoes for me to this day of the, not riding the fence. Revelations chapter 3, if I remember correct, around 3:15, 3:16. Because you are lukewarm, I will vomit you out, because you are neither hot nor cold. And something kind of switched inside of me, reading that, thinking that, because I had always been exposed to this kind of Christianity that either you're just a nice, cool person and you went to heaven, or you were, you know, somebody who was evil and you wouldn't. And it was very vague and didn't really matter as long as you were being a good person, right? So that kind of shook things up for me, put it in another perspective. Started hanging out with that group of people and saw wonderful, awesome things, started learning, started actually caring about what was going on in life. And we were in that Bible study. It seemed, I would still say to this day, the Holy Spirit was moving within that group of people. We're going out evangelizing. Another big life moment that I still remember and that still kind of leads my purpose to today. I met some guy on the street when we were witnessing down in Santa Monica. And I was trying to explain to him, why he needed to accept Jesus and this and that. And he told me, I don't even have the luxury to think about when I die. Right now, I just need to put food on my family's table and pay for the bills. I got 2 or 3 jobs. I have to spend time in traffic, this and that. And it just really kind of struck me. I was a probably 18 to 22-year-old guy at that time. Didn't really have too much experience with big responsibilities, but I just realized that most of the people were so drowning in life, all these burdens, that they couldn't even spend time to think about these larger matters, these bigger, deeper philosophical questions of how should I be living my life. For a lot of people, it was just how do I keep my head and neck above water and my family. Going through the Bible study, we hit some kind of point where preterism was being introduced, the idea of a different perspective on the end times versus the typical Calvary Chapel rapture, etc. perspective, along with Calvinism. At the time, I was just devouring the Bible. I was working nights. These perspectives kind of spoke a little bit more to what I felt like I was gleaming from the Bible. But then they became next to anathema in our little church group, a little Bible study. And it blew my mind because uh, Eddie, whom we all know and love, I just, he was doing the things that I would imagine a Christian would be doing, going out, talking to the homeless, bringing the homeless into his house, doing things for them. But yet he was being banned from a Bible study. Just totally rocked my world. And I think things were just shifting at that time. As I think people were getting married. We, I, I decided to take the book of John and I would read it piece by piece over and over and over again until I felt like got a pure understanding of what was going on there. My central prayer, I think, from then till now has been, I just want to know the one true whatever, the creator of the universe, whatever you want to call the original source. And I started reading the book of John like chapter by chapter. I'd read it over and over and over again, or just a piece, or a uh, you know even a part of a chapter, until I felt like I understood what was actually going on there. apart from all the teaching that I had received from all the Bible studies. I got to John, it was the upper room discourse, John 13, 14, and then even up to 17, where Christ is praying. And the one thing that really struck me was that Christ gives a new commandment. He says, a new commandment I give to you is that you love one another. And he says this actually twice, is that you love one another the way I love you. And greater love has no one than man give his life for his friends. And by this, the whole world will know that you're my disciples. And it blew me away. It blew me away that there was this piece, as a new commandment, right? Christ is within that paradigm, the same as God. And God is giving a new commandment. And it's the communion is talked about more than a new commandment from God. And it blew my mind. And it more than that, it was the actual definition of what a Christian was. Reading further into John 17, now, and the reasoning that I followed was that Christ wants us to love one another the way that he loves us. Christ loves us the way God loves us, and God loves us that he would give his only begotten son to die for just the filthiest, wretched of all sinners. Drawing that conclusion, I really rocked my faith, because I was like, I can't call myself a Christian anymore. I can't even try. I can't, like, this bar is so high to love somebody that I would actually give my only begotten son to die at the hands of, be crucified for rapists, murderers. It just kind of rocked me. And that's where a lot of things just kind of got interesting in my life. But it always stuck with me. But my dogmatism went out the by, like, I couldn't like tell somebody, it doesn't make sense to me now that there's this dogmatic view, like, oh, you don't believe in the Bible, well, you're going to go to hell. It's like, oh, do you know what Jesus's new commandment is? So where I am now, back then, I think I started kind of getting into the more dogmatic. I always wondered where the authority of the Bible came from. None of the arguments ever really made total sense to me. And now I do consider myself a Christian, but I don't find absolute authority from the Bible in the way that most evangelicals do. I wholeheartedly believe in the new commandment, and that if you can come to a place where you reckon the old man to be dead, that your personality, your ego, the character you play every day on live TV, if you can reckon that that guy is dead and that it's Christ that who lives inside of you now, and that the gospel that Christ came and taught was that we just need to wholeheartedly believe that the kingdom of heaven is right at our fingertips, that we just need to turn around to the source, which is Christ inside of us, to repent of our sins, and just love people to extreme lengths, and just be filled with the Holy Spirit. Breathe in and just feel Christ alive inside of you. I think now this is where I think the Christian of me of years past would start raising eyebrows, because I think that this has actually been taught and translated into different faiths. I see it within Buddhism. I see the essence of it in Taoism. I do see it in the mystic tradition of Islam. Not too familiar with the Quran and couldn't cite passages for it, but Rumi really speaks to my heart a lot. Yeah, I think that's probably a quick and dirty journey, if you would, of where I was
That
and
was
where I
excellent.
am.
That was excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I didn't know I didn't know most of your story, I think. think you just showed up, and I guess we never really talked that much about your spiritual journey.
I think you showed up, Dana.
Oh,
Just saying.
sorry.
Josh came before you, you know.
I don't know. Just remember him and the twins and talking about buying laundromats.
Oh, nightclubs and laundromats.
Oh, we had some good ideas for nightclubs.
So
Four
I
stories.
have a question. How would you communicate or how are you planning to communicate your views on faith to your child? How would you explain things to your child? Or what would you want to expose him to?
All of it, I think, as much as I've been exposed to, and to let him. I think one of the interesting things is, even though that the essence of these teachings can be found in the world's religions, still the story of Christ is I don't want to say superior, but there's something very unique and special with that. That this person was walking the earth thousands of years ago, preaching love your neighbor as yourself, which I think is still a revolutionary idea that just goes right over people's heads. And then he proved it, right? He showed, like, I think that it was kind of almost the question of, like, how much should we love each other? And Jesus is like, oh, I'll show you. That you'd be willing to go through this. And then that's terrifying. But then when the story continues and you are the continuation of that story, that Christ is alive in you and that you've already gone through all that, I'll definitely be sharing that with them. Because I think it's essential, and it's the most powerful thing that I think is on this earth. I don't know who I was talking to, but I was basically just saying that it's the most powerful story on earth, even if it is just a story. And I say even just a story because the historicity behind everything, I still never was quite convinced. But as the story just by itself is totally worth believing and totally worth living your life for. And I'll teach him that. I'll be honest about where my doubts are. I'll be honest where I put my confidence. But I wholeheartedly will encourage him to learn and experience and take part in other religions as well, and philosophies, to explore them all, to find truth for himself.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I can now.
Yes.
What's interesting is I think Siri just responded too. I guess she can hear me. And she said, interesting question. Anyhow,
we should have a show with Siri, the whole
yeah,
show.
So Ron and Dana, I'm not sure what direction you're going, but I know that I've talked to Josh recently, and I don't think we and him see eye to eye on him being Christian or something like that. I don't know if we want to talk about that or not. But regarding myself, before we get there, if we ever do, I thought about your question, Dana, a little bit and a little bit more later, and I can't help but think that if I met myself now, I really feel like I'm the same person. So I just feel like I didn't know a lot of things, and but given who I know I am, I feel like we would have a really long conversation. And I would
You say,
probably
you're really smart. I think you're really smart.
And-
You're right. I think I'm right too.
And I think Ron and Josh and you can all agree that I do have long conversations with strangers. So if I met this stranger who was me, I think I would have a really long conversation with them. And I know this may sound odd, but I think I'd probably come to the conclusions that I have now.
Well,
Surprise, surprise.
well, I can say this, Jeff. I mean, I've been thinking about I've been thinking about the question, and
I'm glad Dana can appreciate it.
Dana, I met the most amazing man today.
We talked for hours.
Well, that must be
Older Jeff. He has such great potential.
Sorry, go on, Ron.
no. I'm guessing it was a very lively conversation you guys had.
Well, that's what I would imagine. You asked the question, and I tried to think about it, and I think I'm genuinely gonna say this. I think I've always been inquisitive, so certainly outright ignorant on all kinds of things, and so there was a lot of zeal without knowledge initially. So the idea of zeal without knowledge is a Bible passage, but this idea that you're very passionate, but also you don't know that much. Oh wow, someone's doing donuts in my street. Anyhow, so zeal without knowledge, but I think that I could be wrong here, but I think my inquisitiveness is consistent. So while I've grown in information, I think I'll stand by my answer. I think I would just spend a lot of time with myself, and then I think I'm really convinced of where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Well, but I think your past self would have maybe, say Joshua brought up preterism, and I think your past self would have been very concerned about your current self and would have, well, I guess at least really have been concerned.
Maybe, but here's the thing. This is how I say what I say. Here, let me give some insight into my own reflection. I have met many people from many perspectives with many points of views, and I feel like I've attempted to take those perspectives seriously and pursue them, if that makes any sense. And so when I encounter somebody of a different perspective, I want to say I genuinely try to explore what it is they're saying, and I generally find I disagree with them in the end. So if I did meet myself, absolutely, I think I would probably think I was crazy or something weird, this weird guy, but I wouldn't just simply cast them off, because I don't find myself simply casting people off. I will try to find out why what they're saying is either true or false, if that makes sense. I won't simply dismiss them. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't find myself automatically dismissing people and then moving on. I find myself wrestling with things, perhaps more than I ought to, and then coming to a conclusion in the end, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does make sense. If I happen to have run into somebody, well, let's say just happen to run into my past self currently, I would have converted my past self, and my past self would have definitely engaged in the conversation.
Your past self would have converted you?
No. My current self would have converted my past self.
Oh, wow. So we're very arrogant. think.
in my past
Your
self,
past self thinks about that.
in my past self would have definitely engaged in the conversation, without a shadow of a doubt, entertained it, and spent more time than anybody probably that my current self has ever come across.
Wow, we do
Well,
think
wait.
highly of ourselves.
What would your early Christian self think of your current self?
That's what he
That
just
was
said.
the wait, but he's saying he would have tried to convert. He would today try to convert his past self.
Yeah, no, I said I would convert my past self, not tried to. I would have. I
Succeeded.
mean, I
Wow.
would.
But
Very confident.
what wasn't your past self in the question? Your past self is already converted.
Well, no, I know, but you're asking what would that person think of who
You
yeah,
today.
yeah. And what I'm saying, okay, well,
Like you're
um
Ron of like the first year or two you were a Christian, or the time period that we were talking about a lot
yeah,
last time,
yeah.
like that those few early years. What would that Ron think of you today? Now I think it's 20 years later,
How about
right?
this? What
Yeah,
would
I don't think much, I don't think much different. I think, as Jeff said, and I think it just from observation, and you may both of Josh, I know how Jeff feels because he stated how he feels. But I'm gonna take a guess for Dana and Josh. And I'm gonna say, for me personally, what Jeff said rings true for me true, is that I've always been inquisitive. So Jeff and I kind of fall in that same category, but the same kind of questions that I asked 20 years ago, 18 years ago, 22 years ago, however many years it happens to be at this point, are the same kinds of questions and the same dialogues that I have today. So there's not much different. And from observation, and this is just my opinion, I'm not going to take away how you both of you feel, but from my observation, you both seem to be the same kind of person too. I don't see a whole lot of difference. I mean, yes, you've adopted some different things and you've worked through and wrestled through all kinds of different theological and doubts and all sorts of stuff. But the person that you were back then, I don't see any huge differences. I don't see any major shifts in like the person you are. But again, it's just from my observation.
I do think, though, that what Josh maybe was going to say, he can agree or disagree, or Dana too, is it is true that after a brief conversation, I would have probably thought that this guy was totally wrong about the Bible. This guy was totally wrong about the second coming. This guy was maybe even not a Christian. He's just some liberal freak. If that's what you're asking, like the initial takeaway, I probably might have those perspectives. But I'm talking about more of a, if I actually met myself, like spent time with me, if that's what you're saying. I don't
Yeah,
know what the
maybe
difference
first
is.
impression. Maybe
The
first
first
impression.
impression, I would probably, think that this person doesn't believe the Bible. This person doesn't uh, realize the end of the world's coming. This person probably isn't even a Christian. They're just some maybe some theologian person or something who thinks they have some special knowledge or something like that. I don't know. I could see myself
I probably
being,
I probably would have
being
I probably would have said like something like, "Wow, this guy's like ultra liberal."
and handsome.
and yeah, and yes.
you know,
Yeah.
I remember specifically thinking in my room around that time, like I can't ever imagine not being in the truth like I am now.
Is that a
And
smile you have on your face?
yeah, I think back on that day sometimes because I was really thinking like, is there any day, like, can I imagine myself like being in some other religion or like falling out of, the truth, or not thinking that the Bible is inerrant, inspired, and, just the full Calvary Chapel rundown. And it was just like beyond like comprehensible to me.
And while I didn't have the exact same words, I had the strong confidence that I certainly don't have anymore. I had this real certainty, and it was an amazing certainty. And what's interesting about that, it even got more wonderful when I discovered Kent Hovind. And for the first time, I thought maybe the Earth is young, if I remember right. I was thinking that's great. And then you remember he talks about that archaeologist who found the
wheels under the Red Sea.
And I was watching that and I was like, oh my gosh, like this stuff's all real. And I had this real sense of certainty. That certainly went away. Haha, get it? Certainly went away. But I have a different type of way in which I am at where I'm at now. But it's not like that. It's not this real strong, I got this kind of feeling.
Wow, that would, Jeff, speaking of good topics, that would be an excellent discussion. And that is, speaking of Kent Hovind, because I was exactly the same way. For me, I had this ultra confidence that drove me to the point where, if I felt like I needed to tell somebody something, and I guess it's, again, maybe not much different than it is today, but I would have stopped my car. I did stop my car in certain cases and walk out and go talk to somebody because I felt so strongly about what I had to say, and I felt it was very, very important. But there was confidence in it that came from all of that stuff. And when I say stuff, I mean like, teachers like Kent Hovind, right? He's presenting like evidence for the faith, and when you do that, and when you believe that, and you're fully engaged in it, it's a very, very powerful thing, right? I mean, you do have a confidence and an assurance, and you have this knowledge that is a very powerful thing, actually.
I made copies of Kent Hovind's videos and passed them out.
Well, yeah, no, naturally.
And I think he allowed that, so in case anyone's going to try to arrest me.
I'm curious to know what Dana's answer to this question is.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll tell you. Just one thing that I thought of as I was thinking through my response was when I was a fairly new Christian, I remember going to a home of a couple who had older children. And I remember their house was in Glendora, I think. And I think someone had mentioned how much the house cost in passing, or they just bought it or something like that. And I think it was, I can't remember clearly, but maybe like $400,000. And I remember sitting there and looking at the house and realizing like how big it was and how expensive it was. And I just remember thinking like that was a real negative to me. Like, wow, how are they comfortable being in this house? It's so expensive. It's like excessive. And but then I tried to kind of quiet that thought because I didn't want to be, I don't know, something felt overly judgmental or something. And so I was actually thinking about that today as if the old me met the new me, I think in a lot of ways she'd admire me as somebody, as someone who's like really old, like, wow, that lady has all these children. She must really be settled, like in her convictions, like she must really know what she's doing. I always thought that about older people, like, wow, they must really kind of, whatever they're doing, it's really because they know that's what they should be doing. Like someone who was about 40 seemed very old to me and established. I had that sense like, wow, they're just doing things right or something. And so I think the old me would have thought that, but also the old me might have looked at my house and realized how much the house cost and been a little like, oh, that might not be a good thing. she should be living in a school bus with her 8 children in some Walmart parking lot. I think, or like, we brought up Eddie, but we had a friend who lived in a trailer park, and he could have afforded more, but that kind of like, oh, someone's living in a trailer park, in a really rundown trailer park with a meager amount of space, like that seemed more legit Christian. Like that's more blameless. That was in my mind. And now I think the new me, the current me, still is open to questioning whether we should own a house and stuff, or how much space we really need. But then the new me also really likes having space for children to run around and do things. And I need a lot of room to hang out my laundry when I hang it out, and to grow food when I grow food. And the new me has some swim in a pool when I'm boiling hot. So I think the new me makes some room for the family, which I didn't realize how important that would be to me back then when I was single and childless. Does that make sense? So I think it'd be a mix of admiration and kind of wondering, oh, is this lady living too luxuriously?
Excruciatingly beautiful too,
Yes.
You'd be like,
yes.
But, and I don't think the old me would realize how much the new me was learning things or re-examining things. Did you all have that impression of older people back when you were 20, like that they were really kind of solid in what they were doing or believing? Not in a good way?
Yeah, for probably most of the people that
audio.
For most of the people that I would say were in that, yeah, they were more firm in what they thought and believed, but it never really seemed grounded in anything. And there were people who had faith that I admired, and kind of sparkled in their own way. But yeah, I think one thing I've kind of loosened up on is more or less this pursuit of hard truth and knowledge, and seeking more of the love aspect and kindness. But there were people who I just thought their faith was amazing, but it was like, wow, how cool it would be if they actually kind of, knew something about their faith. Or I know other people was like, oh, well, it's unfortunate that they don't just kind of open up and explore these things a little bit and come to faith.
Which goes to Dana's question, which I do find interesting. I think I had a false impression of adults in general, that they were the things Dana described. As a teacher, you really experience it. The children, they think you are something, but you kind of think you're just the same as they are. But you can see it in their body language, the way they speak with you. They get nervous, especially the freshmen. And they have this interaction with you in which they have all kinds of ideas they bring, which may be false. I'm just kind of a regular person trying to figure out this world. And maybe I'm unusual, I don't know, but I do find that when I speak to people my age about deeper questions, they don't seem to have great answers necessarily if you're able to have those conversations. And so it is kind of a false impression, maybe. And I think it's hard to get through because there is also this relationship between the young and the old, where maybe we don't treat the young people with enough, what is it? Like they are on the same level also, if that makes sense. So
equality. Yeah,
there isn't an equality of mind almost. And so there is a down looking from the adult status, I feel. So it does keep that false idea that they're something and you're not. So I don't know if you're going that deep into it, Dana, but I do think that I had those thoughts. But now that I'm that old person, we are actually old now. I don't feel special really in any way. I do feel like I have a lot of information in my mind, and I feel like I've pursued a lot of things, and I feel like I have come to a lot of conclusions that I feel are pretty well thought out, if I may say. I don't know. But beyond that, I'm not really sure what separates me from a 18-year-old.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think, for us, our first pastor was Pastor C at CC blank, and
Chuck
that
Brewer is a
he,
famous pastor.
so you could say his name. So, but that he was the same age that you are now when we were going there, and so, we really, he was authoritative, right?
Sure.
And just to think, just in terms of age, you're the same age that he was, yet he seems so, again, just authoritative or like larger than life or something. So that's interesting. Not to say that it means he's less correct or anything, but just to realize, we're those those people now who could be leading a church.
Yes. I all of this is good. This is exactly the perceptions that you have when you're younger of older people are typically that of the authoritative figure. And I certainly had that. And admittedly, I was very influenced by somebody's appearance, how they looked, the things that they felt that were important to them in the worldly sense, we'll call it, whether
That's
it be
why you wanted to hang out with me at first, right? Because of my good looks.
Well, your good looks and your love
Style.
for money, the dress. I mean, it was the entire package. I mean,
yeah.
no, I absolutely. So, but all of those things for me, I was influenced by those things in the sense that now I was never I would go with you, Dana, and you, Jeff, and you, Josh, in the same respect that rings true for all of us as far as what you were saying when it comes to you look at somebody back then, right, and you might think, wow, that's pretty excessive. And is that really needed? And for whatever reason, I would always have those questions. And I know from the many conversations that we had over the years, each of you kind of felt the same way. And to a certain extent, you'd probably, I feel like, probably still have some of that same sentiment, right? I mean, you would still kind of feel that way in some respect, although you would say, you'd give a little bit more liberty in that area and say that who am I to consider what somebody finds important to them, or somebody, if somebody needs a big house, like Dana, you have 8 kids. I mean, that's huge. And so not only do you have 8 kids, but you have 8 kids, and you're doing this as an individual, a homeschool, right? And your husband works full time, and you're taking on a lot of things,
and he's mentally handicapped.
Yeah, largely, hugely. Evasive, I would say that.
Well, maybe the other mentally handicapped, the opposite, like he's so mentally endowed. That actually is a problem,
Yeah, no, absolutely no. That's all true. It's like this dysfunctional kind of weird thing that's spit out, and it's like it's all of it. It's It's all of it. It's dysfunctional. It's just everything. It's smart. It's brilliant. It's crazy.
Terrifying.
It's all of it.
Yeah, it's like East and West. Eventually they meet, right? Like,
Yeah, it's all, four corners of the earth, all sitting right there in one thing. But
Nice.
all of us would share some of that stuff now, and most people would. That's not like exclusive to us. A lot of people feel that way. But this idea of the authoritative figures, that was me too. Bottom line is, I would look at teachers or professors. The issue that
yes.
the issue that I personally consistently had was that I would pursue those people that I initially thought were these authoritative, wise figures, right? If I saw somebody, or even hearing some things that they may say, especially like a professor or teacher, college, professor, that was huge for me at certain times. And I would want to really engage, in these conversations with these people. And what ultimately for me, what ended up happening, a lot of times I'd have conversations, and in some respect, I would realize that my image of this person and the wisdom that they carried, and what I thought that they had, wasn't actually true. And so over and over again, I would try to engage in conversations, and I would end up coming up short. Short in the sense that I would, come to at some point the realization that this individual really isn't going to spit out these words of wisdom that are going to solve all of my questions, or answer all of my questions, and I'm just going to go, wow, that's it. This is, that just, it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I like today, I think today that I do, yeah, so maybe that veneer of authority has gone away because a lot of these, say, pastors are, they're the same age as we are. So there's not that age gap where you think that they've gained so much in that 20-year age difference. And so now I more closely examine, like I listen to them, right? And try to see where they're going. And in the church context, I'm trying to see if it lines up with the Bible. And, I think real wise, good teachers are out there, but it does seem to be a rare gem. So
J-I-M.
Jim, GEM, but yes, calling out to Jim. But they're there, and I'm thankful for YouTube because I've been able to seek out some teachers who I think are worth listening to. And then, as far as pastors, I feel like Jeff and I were really blessed at the Anabaptist church. So I think that there's some good ones out there, but yeah, it seems like it's tough.
Josh, question for you.
Uh-oh.
Let me get ready.
Yeah.
Buckle up.
Buckle up, my friend.
I was just bringing the mic to my mouth.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And this is not just for Josh, but I wanted to give him an opportunity because we've gone around. Number one, thank you in the beginning. That was a very good, I think, just kind of snapshot of the story and kind of where you were in perspective to last week's show, and where you kind of fit into this whole thing, because you were obviously a huge part of these discussions that we've had over the years. Jeff and I have talked many times on the show about our history as far as that we had, that whole group that we set up, and people coming and going. Well, one of the people that kind of stuck around, and I would say, there was certainly periods of time where you may not have been active in the discussion, meaning that you weren't necessarily participating a whole lot, but you were one of the people that kind of stuck around the whole time, which for me personally is kind of important because I feel like, with those that were able to kind of stick around, with those that were able to kind of go through those periods of time, for me personally, because I know, although you hear me say, or you hear Jeff say, email exchanges or debate, forums, but in that was a for me, and I know probably for you guys too, some very interesting, and I would say almost difficult times working through that stuff. That it wasn't like it was all exciting the whole time, as far as, you know a lively discussion. Yeah, there was that, but probably for you guys, and I know for me, I just say this, but I'm guessing for you as well, that away from that, when you're processing all that stuff and you're trying to work through it and you're going through all life's difficulties, that sometimes, would be some kind of heavy times, emotionally, because sometimes your world's turning upside down and you're figuring out all these things and you've got these doubts and all kinds of crazy stuff is going on. And then I think to be able to trek through that and go through that, for me personally, that's important to me, when I know somebody has that ability. So with that said, I mean, um, and this is, again, not just directed towards you, Josh, personally, but everybody can answer kind of this question, or could talk about this, but um, Dana mentioned the premise for this show, the kind of the topic is the old you, and the new you, and what would you be saying, to that person. Do you feel do you feel now that your confidence, your assurance, peace that you have, the understanding that you have, is to a greater degree, it has a more fullness now than it did back then, or vice versa? Do you, because Jeff said something earlier and I commented on it, and this assurance that I know I had back then, right? And whether it was zealous and ignorant, right? And just, I don't know what you want to call it, but there's this assurance, right? Um that seems to be like this, almost this ignorance, this blissful ignorance, that some people possess back then, and maybe we all did or didn't. And my question is, do you feel now that assurance, or that kind of confidence is greater, now than it was back then, or vice versa? Does that make
I think
sense?
so. Yeah, it does. And I really resonate with what Jeff was saying earlier about like that confidence is kind of gone, right? And you were saying it right now. It's yeah, back then it seemed to all fit together and make sense. And I think there was faith in the Biola folks and all of them to have had the pieces together, and they were going to, essentially show us the chariot wheels underneath the Red Sea, and we're just waiting for the submarines and all this stuff. But there, I guess for me, it's a different assurance. I was just talking to a coworker friend today about how, because she asked, she's like, "Do you ever pray for God to show you, what you should be doing or something like that?" And I just shared with her that, I've prayed a lot for to know the truth and to be in the truth. And the more that I've prayed that, the more I think I realized in the Bible, there's not this huge discussion about truth. And it's more this discussion and urging of love and taking care of each other and loving your neighbor as yourself. And the more that I lean into that, the more I lean into you know, the the two greatest commandments, love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. There is a comfort and assurance there. The more I try to let go of what I think I know, the more that I become more confident that nobody really actually knows anything that's going on. I think there is an assurance there. Does that make any sense?
Yes,
Not for
yes.
me.
Not for me. This guy.
No, I know where Jeff made a comment earlier about you being a Christian and what the ideas behind that. I think I know where he's going with that. I know what Jeff is saying, but I did just really quick want to comment. I don't want to interrupt you, Josh or Jeff. I'm going to let you talk, but yes, Josh, what you said, I understand what you're saying. Yes.
Thanks, Ron.
Like I said, I don't know the purpose, but I know that I don't know as of today's date, but I know I've had conversations with Josh, and I think I sincerely disagree with him, and I sincerely think that this is a nonsensical idea that he doesn't know anything. Um, I, I think we've talked a little bit, Josh, but again, I don't know what the purpose of this show is. I don't know if me and Josh need
Wait,
to get into things.
wait.
But
What
I
do you
got
mean
get
you don't?
angry.
Wait, what do you mean you don't know what the purpose of the show is?
Oh, I'm saying that Dana had some questions, and the things I'm saying right now don't quite jive with those questions. I'm not sure what.
Yeah. The
I'm not. I'm
purpose
not.
of
I'm
the
not.
show is to explore the universe with DJ Ron. That's the purpose of the show.
Yeah. So,
That's
for
all good
example, we
metaphor,
could pick
Jeff.
one thing. I think Josh, you said learning that you don't know anything, right, or something like that.
Something like that.
But that's like a nonsensical kind of statement.
Knowing that I know nothing.
Mm-hmm. It's actually like the definition of breaking the law of non-contradiction. I mean, you're saying the opposite of what you're saying.
Maybe Josh
Well,
is recognizing that he has axioms.
well, yes, that's probably the case because Josh did make some statements that I feel were pretty bold statements as far as professions of faith. And I'm not disagreeing with you, Josh, as far as your convictions there. What I'm saying is your at least your way to present those, and I don't know if it comes from your well, I would say you've always kind of had those characteristics. You've had a confidence when you speak. But I would say the statements that you made earlier, when you were kind of going through your testimony and what you would believe and how you would teach your children when you were addressing Jeff's question, I would say that certainly doesn't sound like somebody that doesn't know anything and is not sure about anything. That sounded like somebody that had some assurance and had some confidence in what they do know, just from perspective.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's the deeper question of what constitutes knowledge, right? And I think these are kind of conversations that Jeff and I get into. Is there deduction? To me, seems to be built on top of induction, right? We can't deduce principles and get to truth unless we infer a whole bunch of things, and we use a bunch of categories and concepts to build bigger ideas. But the more that we get down into the assumptions and the particulates of those and the axioms, you have to start with those axioms, right, Jeff? You got to come down to truth statements, and you have to assume that those truth statements are true.
That is something different than someone who says, I know that I know nothing. That what you just described, I think accurately, is all encompassing. It means that you can't even know that you know nothing. You might actually know everything. So you don't get to you don't get to say,
Wow.
you don't get to say what, just the fact that you don't
The word
know
on the street.
Yeah, but just because you don't know with certainty and you have to make a guess doesn't mean your guess is wrong. So you may actually be guessing accurately. For example, let's take mathematics. Maybe it is true that this entire mathematical system that we assume the foundation for connects well with what is actually real. And in that sense, my belief system aligns with truth. And at that point, while ultimately it's belief-based, my beliefs are accurately aligned with reality. Therefore, I actually know the truth. I actually know how to exist within this world in a mathematical sense. And so fundamentally, it's a guess, absolutely. But I don't get to say that I know my guesses are wrong. That would be going against the very idea of an axiom. You're actually saying, ultimately, I don't know with certainty whether this is true, here it comes, or false. So I'm going to have to guess. I'm going to have to make a decision. And in my decision, I could actually make the right decision. Or said another way, my current belief system right now leads me to believe it's wrong to kill somebody. Believe it's wrong to kill somebody. But that really seems to align with what I experience on a moment-by-moment basis. So perhaps the reality is I actually know it's wrong to kill somebody. And then my beliefs align with what I know, if that makes any sense.
So
That
you're
makes
staring down the barrel of a gun pointed at Adolf Hitler.
I don't know what you just
Right.
said.
You're until the instant you say to kill somebody is wrong, but then I think this was oh my gosh, who was one of the
If we may not, I understand. I think I know what you're talking about, but I think I understand what you just said, but I'm not talking about exceptions or details. I'm talking about the all-encompassing idea of axioms includes not even knowing whether you're actually right. You might actually be right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe what you're experiencing right now is the truth. Maybe you really are on a Google Hangout with me, and we really are engaging about the truths of the universe as we explore it with DJ Ron. And maybe all those things are in the realm of things you actually know. You are actually having a real knowledgeable, you know tons of things. There's so many things you know. So within the realm of not knowing includes the possibility that you actually do have quite an excellent knowledge of what's going on right in front of you.
I like that a lot. I like the discussion a lot. I do want to just pause for a minute because I don't want to. I think this discussion is a very important discussion and one that I want to definitely continue on. But I don't want to lose focus on Dana's kind of objective for this topic, and I'm hoping that that's not going to take away from it. If it
It's
makes
true.
sense.
I digress. And Dana, what do you think?
It's been an interesting discussion. I think when you touching on the idea of how sure you were at first and how that's different than now. I don't know. In one sense, I think I had, when I was first converted, I think I had some really good bones of like faith. Like I knew that God required me to change and repent of some things. And I think now I realize that there was a lot more that I should have given up sooner. But I think that the idea of being holy was there early on, and I'm still there today. And that stayed true through the last, I guess, 20 years. And even while I did learn more about the documentary hypothesis of the Bible and all the objections to why this book has errors and more theories about why the book was written, was it written to ensure the power of men and suppress the, peasants and whatever. I'm aware of those things now.
Berkeley religious
more so than
major.
What?
Berkeley religious studies major.
Liberal.
No, but I don't. So yeah, but I wouldn't say that I'm less sure about some of the fundamental things. Trying to follow God, repenting, trying to be holy. Right? I think those things are more what I focus on and what I would encourage another person to do. And I don't know if those things get shaken at all by hearing about some of the evidences. Maybe I wasn't as into end times as you all were too. But I am. I feel like I'm more open-minded about, okay, is the world going to end? Is Jeff right about preterism? It seems like I wouldn't live that much differently than what I'm living today. So maybe I didn't hit that for that particular assuredness. I didn't get shaken because I wasn't really super into that, as far as I can recall. Maybe you remember me differently, Jeff. But I think you all might have experienced more of a crash, right? Of faith in that area of end times. But as far as like the daily Christian life, I feel like I've just gone deeper into what I started with. And it seems good. Like I think the fruit's good. I when I look at how it plays out in other people's lives, I still think that basic Christian life is really the way to go. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it answers mine. That was good. Thank you. Jeff?
Yes, sir.
Do you, it sounded to me like what Dana just said kind of would probably resonate with you as well.
It might actually. It might. And with things Josh has been saying, I think we've spent, each of us in this room to varying degrees, a lot of time pursuing the finer details of this religious belief system that we walked right into in our teens. And in different ways we've said it today, maybe not you, Ron, that I can recall, but in different ways Josh and Dana and I have probably come to this idea that all these fine details, while I'm not saying you shouldn't explore them, I think they're very valuable and interesting. But there is this fundamental idea that Josh was mentioning. Can we just love our neighbor? Can we just lay our lives down for others? And on a day-to-day, moment-by-moment, living this thing out, those are far more profound and challenging and effective ways of going about this stuff, if that makes any sense. I'm not saying, though, that I agree with Josh. That's the key. But I am saying that I understand what he's getting at when he talks about. I think he's saying something along those lines, Josh, right? Or no?
Yeah, no, I think the best thing one can do is with all these things is just in every moment and everything, just really love and appreciate what's going on, what's happening, this gift that you're given, and whether that's exploring more the theology and different views and different perspectives of all these people, acquiring that knowledge is, I don't think it is a waste of time. It is a waste of time, I think, if you're agonizing over it and you're using it to be divisive and to separate people and to ban them from your Bible study. I think that was.
Uh-oh.
Not that I want to be divisive about people banning people from their Bible study, because I think that is an important piece, but I think it really threw me for a loop that we were in a group following a guy who was preaching, this kind of love, and who would kind of yell at the religious leaders for blocking the way to heaven. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say, though, just to try to walk this, there's a line here I want to walk down that's important. I agree with you that there's something about our human experience in which fundamentally we ought to love our neighbor. I believe that Jesus taught that he separated the sheep and the goat, and a lot of it was about how they treated others. And then the way that they treated the least of these, that's the way that you've treated Jesus. And so what I'm trying to say is I agree that on a moment by moment experience of this life, there's some great truth there. But that doesn't mean that I agree with you on so many things. There's so many things I think I probably disagree with you on. And so there's this experience in the moment, which is, I believe we ought to choose right. We ought to give of ourselves. We ought to lay down our lives, in which I have this agreement with you. But all this other stuff you say, I think I disagree. And I think, regarding walking that line, I think it's possible to agree with you that we ought to live right, but still disagree with you that your beliefs are correct. Because in the end, you probably disagree with me that my beliefs are correct, I would guess. But
I would probably disagree with you. I would say you're not right on trying to make it about what's right and wrong. Like living right, I would say it's more organic than kind of this robotic right and wrong. One thing that's been just kind of profound for me for the last couple of years is I take the Garden of Eden, and they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and they couldn't stay in the garden of life anymore and eat of the tree of life. And I think there's a profound lesson there in that it's not about going through life and judging between right and wrong as much as it is just absolutely operating from a place of love, of deep, deep, deep love.
and see, oh, yes.
No.
I was going to say, see, we have this agreement area, but then you go and you say these other things which I don't agree with, and that's what I find interesting. So while I'm trying to say, while I agree about this way we ought to live, I think if we talked about the details, we would have some serious disagreements and things that are worth talking about, like actual belief statements you have that, to me, don't make sense. And what's interesting too is I get this sense from you that you almost dismiss it as is not worth pursuing anymore, and it's kind of ironic to me because I don't think this is incorrect, but it almost feels like you know the truth now, and part of that truth is not to waste your time talking to me about.
That's not true. I would love having these conversations with you, Jeff. I've always had.
I gotta say, I like this, and I'm wondering, Josh, can we get a commitment from you for next week?
For $10 a
Now,
month.
now we're gonna negotiate.
Now it gets real.
Yeah,
Now it gets real.
Yeah. Can I get a?
Oh, look at that! I gotta go to bed. I'm like 45 minutes past my
Yeah.
commitment.
Well, no, my question.
We all got to go to bed.
Yeah, my question is it possible to get a commitment for you for at least like maybe next week to continue this discussion, and more specifically though, I kind of want to dive into where this thing is heading at the moment, and that is getting into some more of these specifics that we're talking about, because if we can, I think that's going to be a pretty good discussion.
I don't know about you, but I think I hear something.
Perfect.
I love that.
I love hanging out with you people. I really do. Oh man. Play us off, Jeff.